At 18, I thought the Corps would make me a man. At 28, I came home with medals, nightmares, and a family I barely recognized. My squad was gone. My mind was a wreck. And while I was drowning in memories, my best friend was stealing the only thing I had left, my wife's trust. I couldn't save my brothers in that desert, but I'll be damned if I let betrayal finish the job. This time, the mission is personal, and I'm taking my life back Marine style. It started with a phone call I wasn't meant to hear. The twins had been fussy all morning, and my wife had taken them out for a walk to calm them down. I was half dozing on the couch, letting the quiet soak in, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I didn't recognize the number, but the voice on the other end made my stomach knot instantly. It was Ryan. Only, he wasn't calling me. He'd pocket dialed. I could hear him laughing, a low, easy sound I hadn't heard from him in months, and then I heard her voice. My wife's. She was laughing too. The kind of laugh you give someone who makes you feel seen. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in a long time. I told myself it was nothing. Friends laugh. People share moments. But the seed had been planted, and my brain, wired for survival, for spotting danger before it could strike, wouldn't let it go. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while she scrolled through her phone beside me. The blue light from the screen lit her face, and I caught the faint curve of a smile. She turned slightly, her thumb moving in that quick, familiar pattern. Texting. I didn't ask who. I didn't want to hear the lies she might tell. Days blurred together. Ryan stopped dropping by during daylight and started coming around when he knew I'd be at VA appointments or running errands. I noticed things, beer bottles in the recycling that I hadn't opened, a sweatshirt in the laundry that wasn't mine, the faint smell of cologne lingering in the kitchen when I walked in from the cold. My mind cataloged every detail the way it had on patrols. Except this time, the enemy wasn't a figure in the distance. He was my friend. The worst moment came one rainy afternoon. I'd gone to pick up diapers from the store, and the cashier told me my wife had been in earlier with a tall guy with dark hair. My mouth went dry, my chest tight. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it could have been anyone. But as I drove home, the image burned in my head, her walking beside him, maybe laughing at something he said, maybe holding one of the twins' hands while he carried the other. The thought was like swallowing glass. That night, I sat at the kitchen table after everyone had gone to bed. I'd pulled my medals out again, but this time they weren't a comfort. They were an accusation. What good were all these pieces of ribbon and metal if I couldn't even protect my own home, my own family? My hands shook as I held them, and for the first time since coming back, I felt the heat of rage start to cut through the fog of my depression. It was Martinez's voice I heard in my head from years ago. You see the threat, you neutralize it. That's the job. Back then, it had been simple. Identify the enemy. Take action. But now, the enemy wore a familiar face. He'd been the one I trusted with the people I loved most while I was half a world away, watching brothers die in the sand. And while I was drowning in memories, while I was breaking myself to keep breathing for my kids, Ryan had been making himself comfortable in the space I'd left behind. The day I found proof, it didn't come with fireworks or screaming. It was quiet. I came home early from an appointment, the twins asleep in their car seats, and walked into the kitchen. On the counter sat a coffee cup, Ryan's favorite chain, his name scrawled on the side in black marker. Beside it was my wife's phone, face up, screen lit with a new message. I didn't mean to look, but my eyes locked on the words before I could stop myself. Can't wait to see you again tonight. My body went cold, then hot, a flush of adrenaline and nausea that made my vision swim. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, listening to the faint sound of rain against the windows, the steady breathing of my children from the living room, and the pounding of my own heart in my ears. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just suspicion. This wasn't paranoia. This was betrayal. And in my world, betrayal had consequences. It didn't happen all at once. That's the part that still eats at me. It wasn't like an explosion on deployment, where the blast hits and everything is smoke and ringing ears. This was slower, like watching a crack spread through the glass of a window you're standing behind. You know it's only a matter of time before it shatters, but you just keep watching, helpless. The first crack came in the form of a phone call I wasn't meant to hear. I was half asleep on the couch, the VA meds making me groggy, the hum of the refrigerator lulling me into that strange half-dream where time feels like it's slowing down. My wife had taken the twins out for a walk. I remember thinking how quiet the house was, how rare that had become. Then my phone buzzed against the wood of the coffee table. I didn't recognize the number. I answered anyway. What I got wasn't a conversation. It was a pocket dial. But the second I heard Ryan's voice, the fog in my brain cleared. He was laughing, that easy, confident laugh I remember from our high school days, the one that could charm teachers, waitresses, anyone. And then I heard another laugh. My wife's. It was the tone that caught me off guard. Light, warm, unguarded. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in what felt like years. Not since before the twins. Not since before my last tour. I lay there, phone to my ear, frozen. They weren't saying anything obviously incriminating, just talking about some movie, some joke. But something inside me shifted. A warning. A gut punch. When I hung up, I told myself it was nothing. Friends joke, people laugh, life goes on. But the seed had been planted. And the problem with me, post-combat me, was that once my brain marked something as a potential threat, it didn't let go. Marines are trained to spot patterns, to connect dots. Sometimes that's a life-saving skill. Sometimes it's poison. That night, lying in bed, I watched her scroll through her phone beside me. The blue glow lit her face, and I caught the tiniest curve of her lips, like she was smiling at something. Her thumb moved fast. Tap, 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 pause, tap. Texting. I wanted to ask who. I didn't. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. Maybe I was afraid of the lie. The cracks widened. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Ryan's visits shifting. He used to swing by during the day, bringing beers, checking in. Now he came by when I wasn't around, when I had VA group or a medical appointment. I'd come home to find 2 mugs in the sink, or the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. One afternoon, I found a sweatshirt in the laundry that wasn't mine. It was one of those pullover hoodies Ryan always wore, with the sleeves pushed up and the inside worn soft from years of use. I stood there holding it, my mind racing. Maybe he'd left it here during a visit. Maybe she'd borrowed it because she was cold. Logical explanations. And yet, the more I tried to convince myself, the more my chest tightened. Then there were the little things, the recycling bin with empty beer bottles I didn't drink, the takeout containers from a restaurant she and I never ordered from, the way she'd leave the room to take certain calls. The cashier incident sealed the suspicion. I'd run out to grab diapers, the rain soaking through my jacket as I hurried from the car to the store. At checkout, the cashier smiled and said, "Back again? Didn't I see you in here earlier with a tall guy with dark hair?" For a second, I couldn't answer. My throat felt tight, my pulse in my ears. I forced a laugh, paid for the diapers, and left without saying a word. The drive home was a blur, wipers swiping back and forth, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. In my head, I saw them together, her leaning into him, maybe laughing at something he said, maybe one of the twins perched on his hip like he belonged there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of settling wood. My medals were in front of me, laid out in a neat row. I used to feel pride looking at them. Now they just felt heavy, mocking. I'd survived firefights, carried brothers to safety under enemy fire, but here I was blind in my own home. I thought about the men I'd lost in my last tour. The blast, the silence, the way the dust hung in the air, catching the light in that surreal way that makes you think time has stopped. My brothers gone in an instant. I couldn't save them. And now I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing the only family I had left. The day I found proof, it was almost mundane. No drama, no raised voices. Just a moment. I come back early from a VA session, the twins asleep in their car seats. I stepped into the kitchen and saw it. A coffee cup from Ryan's favorite chain, his name scrawled across it in black marker. Beside it, my wife's phone, screen lit with a new text notification. I didn't want to look. I swear I didn't. But my eyes landed on the words before I could turn away. "Can't wait to see you again tonight." My body went cold first, like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over me. Then came the heat, flooding my chest, my neck, my face. Adrenaline surged, and my vision tunneled. I could hear my breathing, harsh and ragged, and underneath it, the faint patter of rain against the window. I didn't say anything when she came home. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I moved through the hours like I was back on patrol, quiet, watchful, waiting. Marines don't make a move without a plan. And if I was right about this, if Ryan had really crossed the line, there would be no coming back. The days after that were a blur of observation. I watched her habits, her expressions, the way she lit up when certain messages came through. I saw the care she took with her appearance on days Ryan happened to stop by. I noticed how she kept her phone close, face down. I also noticed the twins, how Ryan seemed comfortable holding them, how they didn't cry in his arms. That was the part that cut deepest. Not just the betrayal of me, but the casual way he stepped into my role, like I'd been replaced without even realizing it. The VA counselor had told me once that PTSD makes you hypervigilant, that your brain is always scanning for threats, even when none exist. But this wasn't nothing. This was real. And every day, it got harder to breathe under the weight of it. It was Martinez's voice I kept hearing in my head. You see the threat, you neutralize it. That's the job. Back then, in the desert, the lines had been clear. Now they were blurred, but the instinct was the same. Identify, plan, act. By the end of that week, I knew two things for certain. Ryan had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Martinez's hand clamped on my shoulder with that old weight, the kind that tells you you're either about to get orders or bad news. I've been sitting in my living room, the twins napping in the next room, staring at nothing. I didn't hear them come in, didn't hear the door. Just his grip, then Thompson's shadow in the doorway. They scanned me like they were back in the sandbox, checking a downed Marine for life. I knew what they saw, hollow eyes, unshaven, 20 pounds lighter than my fighting weight. The rack of medals on the wall didn't match the wreck slumped in front of them. Martinez didn't waste words. You still breathing, Sarge? Last I checked, I said, voice like gravel. Then get the hell up. We got work to do. Work, not therapy, not some VA group session. Work, the kind with an objective, a plan, and a target. The kind we were bred for. Turns out, they've been watching me longer than I thought. Marines don't do casual visits. They come loaded with intel. Thompson laid it out on the table like we were in a forward operating base briefing. Bank statements, credit card charges, hotel receipts. Ryan's fingerprints all over it. Draining my pension, dipping into my savings, covering it with excuses about helping out. There were women in those hotels, and my wife's name on boutique purchases we'd never agreed to. Either she didn't notice, or she didn't care. Judging by the way she lit up when Ryan was around, I knew the answer. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt insulted. Betrayal in the Corps is an executable offense. Out here, it's messy adult relationships. Screw that. I pulled out a legal pad. My hand steadied for the first time in months. Mission objective: remove Ryan from my life permanently. Secondary objective: secure all financial assets. Tertiary objective: deliver a message. You don't target a Marine and walk away. We broke it into phases. Phase 1: cut him off from my accounts and my house. That meant a quiet trip to the bank, with Martinez running interference while I shifted every cent into new, sealed accounts. The bank manager knew me from before the war, didn't ask questions when I show my discharge papers and VA credentials. By sundown, Ryan's access was zero. Phase 2: proof. You don't just hit a target. You justify the strike. Thompson, ever the recon man, had already pulled footage from hotel security cams, found social media posts geotagged to places Ryan wasn't, and traced the card numbers. The pile was damning. I made copies, hard and digital, and locked them away. If anything went sideways, Ryan's reputation would go up in flames before he could blink. Phase 3: action. The kind civilians don't understand. We set the meat under the guise of talking it out. Neutral ground. An old auto garage Martinez's uncle owned, shuttered for years. No cameras. No passersby. Just oil stains, dust, and echoes. Ryan showed up cocky, like he was walking into a job interview he'd already nailed. He opened his mouth to talk, but I cut him off with a single step forward. close enough that he could see what was in my eyes. Not rage, precision. You made two mistakes, I told him. You thought I was broken, and you thought I was alone. Martinez shut the door behind him. Thompson leaned on a rusted workbench. We didn't need to lay hands on him. Not yet. I laid out every receipt, every screenshot, every ugly truth, one by one. Watched his smirk fade like a bad sunset. When his eyes darted toward the exit, Martinez shifted just enough to block it. I told him exactly what was going to happen. He was going to sign over every cent he'd stolen. He was going to leave this state by the end of the week. And he was never going to make contact with my wife or anyone in my family again. If he did, there wouldn't be a conversation next time. Ryan tried to play tough, but you can't fake calm when 3 combat vets are in the room with you. He signed. He left. I knew we'd never see him again. As for my wife, there are no screaming matches, no tearful reconciliations. Just paperwork. I filed for divorce the next morning. Left her the house, took the twins. She didn't fight it. Maybe because she'd already made her choice. Maybe because she knew I wasn't bluffing. By the time the dust settled, I had my kids, my bank accounts, and something I hadn't felt since my last good day in the Corps, control. The nightmares didn't vanish overnight, but they stopped owning me. Martinez and Thompson came by every week. Not to check if I was breathing, but to plan the next phase of my life. You can't save everyone. I learned that in the desert when my squad went down. But you can save yourself, and you can make damn sure no one takes what's left. A Marine never leaves a mission unfinished. This one's done. Thanks for watching. If the story meant something to you, consider subscribing. We've got more like this, stories that don't ask for sympathy, just honesty.